of the month. Yes, thank you. We normally meet on the last Wednesday of the month to have the Tooth Bagay lecture. However, this round is a special one, an initiative coming out of the National Trust. So looking forward to sharing this with each of you, heritage site managers, heritage site advocates, and the staff attached to our heritage sites, as well as our advocates. Welcome. Thank you very much for joining. Good to see you. All right, great. So I believe it is now 5:36. The meeting is being recorded. So let us begin formally. Good afternoon. My name is Joseph Bertrand, Education and Outreach Officer at the National Trust of Trinidad and Tobago. And it is my pleasure to be here in this particular capacity. Normally, I would be the MC for this type of things, but today I'll be the presenter. So thank you very much for allowing me into your space and allowing me the opportunity to speak with you about the Legacy Leaders Program. So just a little bit about the National Trust of Trinidad and Tobago. We are a membership-based organization. For those who may not be members of the National Trust, yes, you can become a member and stand with us in safeguarding our heritage. And this heritage that we speak about is both cultural, built, and natural heritage. So wherever you have your own interest in preserving our heritage, trust me, we have a space for you in the National Trust of Trinidad and Tobago. And each voice is very important to this conversation about safeguarding our heritage. So my friends, those who are not members, please join the National Trust of Trinidad and Tobago so that our voice can be louder in terms of safeguarding our heritage. Yes. And in this moment, I would like to say thank you to all the heritage asset owners, the managers, the staff, and the advocates for our heritage. The National Trust of Trinidad and Tobago acknowledges the work that each of you put in to saving your heritage, the heritage site, the heritage asset. We acknowledge the work that you put in to interpreting the site and then passing it on to the younger generations, and also for those who would interact with the heritage asset. So in this moment, each of you, thank you from the National Trust of Trinidad and Tobago. We say thank you again for the work that you all have done for the heritage sites and for the heritage assets, to the owners, the managers, the staff, and of course, the advocates, the volunteers that work at the sites within Trinidad and Tobago. We cannot do this work without you. And my friends, this particular program, the Legacy Leaders Program, is for you. So, the Legacy Leaders Program built around heritage tourism. And we tend to get ourselves involved in heritage tourism, but do we actually understand the industry and thus the fact that we are the players in heritage tourism and broadly the heritage tourism economy, and what does that do for the GDP, etc. When we look at diversifying the economy and so on, we hear that a lot, but what does that actually mean for heritage tourism? Heritage tourism is a branch of tourism centered around the exploration and appreciation for the region's cultural, historical, and environmental heritage. Now, the heritage site managers, advocates, staff, and so on, if you think as to what you do on a daily basis, this is exactly it. This is exactly it, allowing for people to engage with the site that you oversee, right? And for those who may not necessarily directly oversee one of these heritage sites, but you volunteer, or that you are part and parcel of the organization that runs the heritage site. My friends, thank you very much for the work. And again, we are operating within the heritage tourism framework. Global context of this heritage tourism market. The global context for heritage tourism was estimated at $604.38 billion US dollars in 2024. And it is expected to grow by 4.5% between 2025 and 2030. Right? Between 2025 and 2030, it is expected to grow by 4.5%. Now, if we look at the graphic here, we can see the steady growth based on the model that is put forward to us. Now, we see globally, heritage tourism is a big market. And we understand the history and the heritage of Trinidad and Tobago. And almost every nation within the world can find some sort of connection with us here in this melting pot. We just need to understand how to capitalize upon it, right? Now, the context of Trinidad and Tobago in 2023, 2024, the report coming out of the Ministry of Tourism said that based on the Carnival, the Cricket World Cup, and the cruise ships coming in, the contribution to tourism is estimated at $16 billion, and that is 7.5% as it contributed to the GDP of Trinidad and Tobago, right? So the industry is ripe, all right, for us to capitalize upon it in order to have several different markers hit in terms of preservation, in terms of spearheading the change that we want to see within the idea of diversifying the economy, all right? So my friends, we are the players. We are the ones who are extremely important in getting this particular product off of the ground. Now, in looking at the National Tourism Policy 2021 to 2030, this is part of the policy written into the policy. The development of heritage sites for tourism can be beneficial as it can raise awareness of the value and the significance of sites, increase local pride, and support the protection of these areas. Now, this is written into the policy, so that means that we have the governmental support. We are not just crying in the wilderness. However, we would need to have this product properly packaged, put together, so therefore we can make proper advocation. And I'm sure many of you all here understand this particular point. Now, heritage tourism, the pros and cons. Heritage tourism is definitely, and tourism on the whole, is definitely a double-edged sword. However, let us delve a little bit into it. There is the economic benefit, yes. Increased revenue for all who participate in the heritage tourism sector. Whether you be tour guide, you are the manager of a heritage site, you provide the food, you provide the cleaning services, right? If the site was not available for people to access, then those particular jobs would not have been available. So again, we look at job creation. And of course, primary preservation and thus restoration of the heritage asset itself, the economic benefit. You have to pump in the money in order to have the preservation work, the proper preservation and restorative works done. We also look at the cultural preservation and thus its promotion. The increased awareness of the site and the stories that come out of these heritage sites and heritage assets are extremely important to the Trinbago identity, thus the Caribbean identity, and of course, the world. Extremely important. Cultural revitalization. When the community then comes around this heritage site and thus has the economic activity in and around it, there is a revitalization of the culture, the traditions around the heritage site. And as we mentioned, the community, the empowerment of the community around the heritage site. Yeah. And a third benefit, infrastructure development. Roads, transport, different amenities surrounding the heritage site so that it is accessible and both physically in terms of the roads and also in terms of transportation. You have more taxis, you're able to get the persons from one place to the other, whether it be by boat, etc., right? And of course, the amenities in and around the heritage site. We also need to consider the environment, overcrowding, pollution, and resource depletion, depending on the type of heritage site that we are speaking about or the heritage site that you manage. Overcrowding, pollution, and resource depletion is very, very real in terms of tourism on the whole, and especially in the niche sector that is the heritage tourism. Cultural commodification, loss of authenticity, tourist-oriented activities, and staged performances. I'll get a little bit into the staged a little bit soon, but in terms of the loss of authenticity and the tourist-oriented activities, these would almost water down or may water down the actual traditions that would circulate around the heritage sites. Yeah, so we heard about tourist traps before, where they just make things or create particular experiences that may not necessarily represent what actually was or what actually is, but sanitized or almost staged in a sense, right? And that is where we would get into the staged performances, where if it becomes a problem and not managed properly, then we may lose the essence of the culture that is surrounding the heritage site or the heritage asset. Yeah, but again, proper management of these things. Yeah, so this is the pros and cons of the heritage tourism sector. Now looking at World Heritage and just using the pyramids of Giza as the example. We have this one blogger who took various pictures at the site. Can we see some of these things at our own heritage sites in Trinidad and Tobago? Looking at the visitor experience. If we sit and we study, what do these people see when they come? What do they experience when they come to Trinidad and Tobago? When they come to our heritage sites? What do they experience? What do we want them to experience? Now, in terms of the marketing, how do we put that out there? Because for sure, there's a difference between marketing a fete or a parade than marketing, say, a sacred space. Two completely different approaches to the same concept. And of course, looking across to the next side, preservation, right? How do we highlight the preservation activities being conducted within our heritage space? Yeah. So her experience at the Pyramid of Giza was one that we can see quite interesting. There's accommodation, there's transport, the camel is the transport, and there's food close by, and all of that in and around, taking these pictures and thus marketing the site immediately, because each picture we see the pyramid in the background. So different things to think about, right? And this is what the Legacy Leaders Program coming out of the National Trust of Trinidad and Tobago will teach. Yeah, but my friends, are we behind, or are we on par, or are we ahead? How do we grow the heritage tourism economy? The National Trust of Trinidad and Tobago, we want to work with our site managers, owners, staff, and advocates in a new and innovative way. We work with the heritage site managers. Currently, we bring people to the heritage sites in terms of our tours. We have meetings and putting heritage sites together and having all of the other various interactions. But this particular one is new and innovative in that we are working with our heritage site managers to build the heritage tourism product. Now, I completely understand that each site is different. The listed heritage site, what is an asset register? What is the dossier for listing? Nomination, are you at that point? Do you have the dossier done? So all of these things, we understand completely that each site is at a different stage and different in terms of their stories, right? The needs would be differ, the needs differ. The type of site, accessibility, storytelling, interpretation, all of these things we understand is different. And the Legacy Leaders Program seeks to meet each heritage site where they are, to then level up in order to have one cohesive product within the community, within the consciousness of Trinidad and Tobago and the region, and thus the world. And of course, having this work done would then influence our next generation. Here we have just a quick picture of some scouts who were working, on their National Heritage Badge. Yeah, visiting the Jenner Memorial Mosque in St. Joseph, right? Keeping the heritage conversation alive with our youth. The heritage tourism economy, we speak about diversity, diversifying the economy, the diversity within the context of Trinidad and Tobago's culture as well. So we have it all right here. The communities in and around the heritage sites, the heritage assets, whether it be built or whether it be natural, we have everything right in and around our communities. Just need to know how to tap in to the communities. And there's benefits for the community as well. And of course, individual or personal benefits, where the site itself, you feel a sense of pride, and of course, building our identity as Trinbagonians and forging this identity through the heritage conversation. So the Legacy Leaders Program, my friends. The course of study is tenfold, built in and around peer-to-peer learning, so we learn from each other, and we also have expert presentations. Each module, we have a heritage journal that would work towards your final project. Yes, there's work to do. Work towards the final project in putting the legacy plan together. And with this, we will be able to then implement particular strategies that would work for the site in particular. So the first one, site interpretation. Yeah. This module looks at interpreting the story that is being told at the heritage site. When we speak about a particular site, we tend to have one story in and around. However, we can tell multiple stories. What about who worked there, who built there, who animated the space, the culture in and around the space, multiple things. So we would drill into what is being done currently and how we can then diversify to bring in more audience into the space. Having these kind of think tanks, heritage tourism, product development, building the community. We have the heritage site and what we can bring from around the community that can then be a product for sale. And with that, pump back into protection and preservation of the heritage site. Education and outreach, youth engagement is the third module. Need I say more? We need to understand how to engage our youth and best practices and so on in terms of engaging the youth and looking at the education and outreach strategies currently employed. We may learn from others within the sessions that we could probably employ in our own space. External funding, understanding what that would look like if we do decide to apply for external funding. What does the pitch deck look like? What does the proposal look like? What are some of the big ticket items that these investors are looking for? We have an expert presentation there to help in that regard. The visitor experience and facilitating respectful behavior. Yes, we understand that we want our visitors to come, but it would be different if our site is a sacred space versus that of a public site. Yeah. So how do we then look at what is and then to curb or to direct, gently steer in terms of respectful behavior? Yeah. Some of our sites also may be memorials. How do we then facilitate that type of conversation at the site itself? So these are some of the things that we'll be grappling with in the first half of the session, the Legacy Leaders Program. We'd also be looking at the heritage in the digital age. What does that look like for your site? We're going to be asking that question. How do we harness the digital technology to market, maybe to document, to preserve? How do we do that? Or even for education and outreach. Then looking at resilient heritage and climate change. Extremely important in this day and age. Marketing and communication strategies. How do we market our particular heritage site? What are some of the do's and the don'ts based on your site? These are some of the things that we'll be looking at. Staff recruitment, training, and retention. Extremely, extremely important. How do we then motivate the staff, recruit the staff, train them? What opportunities are out there for training and development, and thus retention? Yep. And then finally, looking at the listing process and dossier writing. What does that look like for your site? What does it mean? And thus working towards the listed heritage status, national heritage status, and of course, working on World Heritage status. So the value we have gone through with these 10 sessions, we're going to be going on a working site visit. The things that we would have learned, then in a case study, employ at the heritage site and see how it works and so on. And of course, applying it to your own heritage site in terms of the legacy plan, networking opportunities. We may have heritage sites close together that may be able to link stories. How do we then put that together? Yeah, so that is an opportunity within the Legacy Leaders Program and building this legacy plan. Now, this legacy plan, out of those 10 sessions, we would then build this legacy plan, looking at what is and what could be in those 10 different topics. And as I said, each topic has an expert presenter who would bring their knowledge to the participants of this particular program. Currently, it is $1,500 to participate in the program. Yep. And quick FAQs, the start date would be the 6th of May, 2025. Yes, there will be a payment plan if you're up to it. Certificate upon completion. And there's a little special. Those who join in or buy into the program this week, it would be $1,000 using the code NTTTLL, National Trust of Trinidad and Tobago Legacy Leaders. Valid only at the end of the week. All right. So just to go back a little bit, the value proposition, 10 sessions, working site visit, networking opportunities, and the legacy plan. And one thing that is quite interesting about the legacy plan, the National Trust of Trinidad and Tobago, and those who are assisting in or facilitating the sessions are going to be working with you after the program is done in terms of implementing the legacy plan. Yep. So you'll have the backing of the National Trust of Trinidad and Tobago in terms of what you decide upon for the heritage sites and your legacy plan. Yep. So at this time, I would like to say thank you very much for the opportunity to bring this particular initiative, the Legacy Leaders Program, to you and to our heritage site managers, staff, advocates, everybody. Right? My name is Joseph Bertrand, Education and Outreach Officer at the National Trust of Trinidad and Tobago. Contact number 225-4750. Sorry, 225-4750. And my email address, joseph.bertrand@nationaltrust.tt. So if you are interested or you know of heritage site managers or heritage sites within your community that can benefit from the Legacy Leaders Program, please refer them to the National Trust. And we are definitely willing to work with each of our heritage sites within Trinidad and Tobago. So at this time, I am open to questions, concerns, queries.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Hi, Joseph. How are you doing? It's Cecile.
Hi, how are you?
Fine. I just put a question on the chat, but
I'm unable to read the chat. Sorry. So.
Oh, okay, no problem. In that case, if you are not talking about heritage sites that are currently under the remit of the National Trust. You're talking about us proposing other heritage sites as well? Or is that possible?
All heritage sites, everyone.
Anything that could be a heritage site?
Anything, yes. Yes.
All right. So my question then is, what if there is a place in Woodbrook that has a lot of heritage on it, going all the way back to plantation times? What if the buildings and so forth currently on that site are currently occupied by government entities? How does one work with or around that? Or is that even a possibility?
It is a possibility. Thank you very much for the question. A lot of our heritage sites actually are managed by governmental agencies. Many of them are.
No, it's not being managed as a heritage site. That's the thing.
Well,
It
yes.
is just being occupied. The buildings are just occupied by government.
Understood the caveat now. So the thing is, in terms of the Legacy Leaders Program, this would then bridge the gap. Yes, it may be operated as an office currently, but if they do participate in the Legacy Leaders Program, or if you can advocate for them to do so, then we may see some sort of change in terms of how it is managed or how it is used. So that is one, I guess, aspect of the Legacy Leaders Program as well. Thank you very much for the question. Let me see if I could pull up the chat. Restrictions. Right, okay, great. Thank you very much.
That was me.
Yes. Thank you very much for the question. So the idea behind the Legacy Leaders Program is definitely to work with all our heritage sites. And we, the staff of the National Trust, may not know all of the heritage sites. However, where you live, you would know what is in and around you. Nominated to the Heritage Asset Register. If you know the site managers, this is an excellent program that they can work through. Now, in terms of the training behind it and the effort put into bringing it together, many of my colleagues, including myself, we have represented the National Trust at international forums and so on, and learning from what our colleagues within the wider region and the world do within their own heritage context. This particular program is built for that. So it is, and it should, once implemented properly, bring us up to standard. Yeah. So many courses, many workshops and so on we've been on in terms of the insight interpretation, for example. How do we then tell multiple stories out of this one site? We're accustomed talking about one thing about the site, but if we delve a little bit deeper, we can then tell other stories that can reach other people and another market. Yeah, so an example for that. Yep. So do we have any other questions? Unfortunately, I'm unable to read in the chat because I'm sharing the screen. It's a little difficult to present and MC at the same time. But
yeah, if I'm checking it, Joseph. There are no other questions in the chat at the moment.
Okay.
Right, but I would just like to reinforce something that you said earlier as well. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Graham Sweet. I work with Joseph at the National Trust, and you made an important point earlier in terms of when we do tours on weekends to locations, we're normally visiting a cluster of sites, and you would find that the appeal and interest and intrigue of an area is really a combination of multiple stories from different sites within that particular community. And so part of what we want to accomplish with this program is help communities take advantage of all the heritage assets that are at their disposal. So while we're speaking to individual advocates and site managers about improving your site, we also want you to understand it in the context of you are part of a building block for the entire community. And so when we reach out to your site and all the others in that particular geographic cluster, the goal is to build a customer experience that is so memorable. When they go to the area, they're seeing so many diverse aspects of the country's culture and heritage that they want to do it more. They want to tell more people about it. They want to get more involved. And so part of what we want to encourage is that you're not just building on the strength of your particular heritage site, but on the strength of what collectively the community and all the sites in the community can bring to the table to create that memorable experience for visitors.
Thank you very much for reiterating. And indeed, my friends, that is exactly it. But one of the components is building the heritage tourism product. And that is exactly where the foundation lies in the community. So when we do take a tour to a location, it's not just a one site, it is multiple within the geographic location, as Graham correctly identified. So it's about collaboration, it's about doing this thing together, my friends. Yeah?
Good afternoon, Joseph. I see Miss George. It's Nisha here. I just see Miss George has her hand up. So
thank you very much for that. Miss George?
Hi, yes, thank you so much. For some reason, Zoom is not allowing me to raise a virtual hand. So in that regard then, if you have 3 separate sites that are close together, but have some measure of similar history, is it possible to put them all under one project, or would they have to be 3 separate projects that are then linked?
It is possible to put it under one project. It is.
Okay.
It is possible, yes.
All right.
Yeah.
Thanks.
No problem. Thank you very much for that.
If I might add as well, Joseph, and the program that is being launched is very timely, in the sense that most of you may recall a couple of years ago, a tax allowance incentive was announced by the Minister of Finance, whereby corporate entities could invest in the restoration programs for heritage sites and claim 150% of that investment as a way of, as an expense to reduce their taxes. And so Joseph had mentioned earlier the issue of funding and whatnot, and I think now it's timely in the sense that when you identify your site, there's a list that the trust has curated so far. It's a dynamic list. It will grow as more information becomes available. But there are upwards of 420 sites on that list that are eligible for qualifying to receive financing from private organizations. And so one of the things we'd want to encourage persons to do is look, when they're looking at their site and they're concerned about how is this going to be financed and whatnot, is that there are businesses in your community that have a vested interest in you bringing more people into the community. And so I imagine part of the program will be also to help you understand, not just from external funding agencies, but even right here locally, how you can build that greater collaboration with the businesses in the community so that everyone is involved in promoting the heritage and the importance of the historical components of the community. So I just wanted to share that as well.
Yep. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And very, very timely. I agree. 150 tax percent. Thank you very much. Yeah. So my friends, sure.
How does one access the portfolio, the current portfolio of sites, to see if your site, the idea for your site is already on it, or where does one go for that? Yeah. Is it online, or
that information will be available via a portal on the National Trust website. The list exists, and within the next week or so, you'd be able to publicly access it. We're creating a geographic information system around the site so that it gives you as much information as we have to kind of hasten the speed with which you can develop a proposal and submit. So that website and that list would tell you whether your site is one of the 420 But I would hasten to add there's also an option for nominating a site, so that even when the list is published, excuse me, when the list is published, if your site is not on it, but you believe, based on your understanding of the history and the importance of it, you believe it should be, there is a nomination form that can help, that you can submit, that the trust will do an evaluation of to determine whether the site should be added to the list and therefore help it to become eligible for that tax allowance incentive.
Thank you.
Joseph, I see Claudia Lynette White wrote in the chat, and she said, I've been going on tours with you all, and it sparked an interest in me to, let me just scroll down, to learn about my country. From the tours, I am now learning about my country. What if I don't know of a site, but would still like to learn? Maybe you could speak more about the volunteerism at this point.
Yes, yes, fantastic. Thank you very much. Is it Claudia?
Her name is
Yes, Claudia Lynette
Claudia.
White.
Thank you
Claudia
very
Lynette
much.
White.
Thank
Yeah.
you very much, Ms. White. Yes, definitely. So the National Trust of Trinidad and Tobago, we have a vibrant volunteer program. Yeah. So just give us a buzz, 225-4750. It is now corrected on this slide. Yes. And we would understand your skill, right? And things that you may want to develop as well. We have opportunities for such within the context of heritage and heritage preservation. So thank you very much for that question. And I'm happy that you have had a wonderful experience with the National Trust of Trinidad and Tobago. Thank you. So,
Joseph, just
yes.
to conclude, she says she will call us and speak to Marlon.
Great.
Yeah. Okay, good.
Yes, that hand I could see.
Hi, I have one question. My name is Dokuzile from Executcom. I just wanted, I don't know if this was covered already because I came in late, but what qualifies as a heritage site? And is there a criteria list that can guide the stakeholder?
Okay. I would defer to the Vice Chair of the National Trust, Ms. Nisha Ghani.
Right. And I would like to defer to somebody else because this is a complicated one, but no, let's go through it. So there are a number of things that can make something a heritage site. It could be the age of the building or the age of the site, the importance of history. It could be maybe somebody significant who has made a big contribution in any area of the national well-being. Or infamy as well, but someone who's made an important contribution who is directly tied to that site. So Eric Williams' birthhouse, or something that is significant to the community in the area. It could be a monument, a site, a space. It could be something to do with culture. It could be something to do with music, cuisine. It is very broad. And what it is you ask yourself, is this something worth preserving for generations to come? And that is sort of the guiding principle. And then you nominate sites, as Joseph mentioned before, there is a form for nomination. You nominate sites and so on. And then the landmark subcommittee will look at it and say if this is something that is significant enough to warrant protection. And that is how the process begins. Graham, Joseph, did I leave anything out?
Yeah, just one thing,
Sure.
So that you just said that there is a process when that there's a list. Do we have access? Does the public have access to that list also?
Right, but that list is going to be available shortly on a portal, but the information is at the National Trust. If you want to call Joseph tomorrow on the number below, he would be able to tell you if the site is, if it's a very well-known site, we may know off the bat. If it's something that we need to go look up on a cadastral or a site plan for, we may need to do that. There are 400 and something sites that have already been nominated for different levels of protection. So it is a matter of just being absolutely certain that what you're speaking about either is or isn't on the list. And the process is very quick. It takes 5 minutes to nominate a site.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much for the question. Thank you very much to the Vice Chair, Ms. Ghani, for answering as well. And if there be no other questions, yeah, just to bring things home, the Legacy Leaders Program is for you, simply, right? Looking at our heritage sites, the heritage tourism product that we put out there, all right? So that is the purpose of the Legacy Leaders Program, in order to really look and interrogate what we do, why we do it, and how do we then present it, giving it a real chance in order to have some sort of impact, have a real impact in the heritage tourism industry. So my friends, I would like to say thank you to each of you who have joined today. Thank you very much to the Vice Chair, Ms. Nisha Ghani, the Business and Development Coordinator, Mr. Graham Sweet, for participating as well within the presentation. So my friends, if there be no questions, concerns, queries, please contact the National Trust of Trinidad and Tobago 225-4750 to participate in the Legacy Leaders Program. If you have any persons who, or any heritage sites that you know about that would benefit from the program, please pass on the information so that they can participate, right? Also, don't forget, please join the National Trust of Trinidad and Tobago as a member, and you will be standing with a large community saying that Trinidad and Tobago's heritage is important. So my friends, do have a wonderful, wonderful evening. We have another Tutbagay lecture tomorrow, 5:30, same place, same time, yes, same time. We have our AGM coming up. Don't forget, if you're not members, please join the National Trust and help steer the direction of the National Trust at the AGM. Also, if you are members and you're non-financial, don't forget to become financial so you have the voting power, right? And Easter is coming up, the 20th of April. Please stay close to our social media channels, Instagram, Facebook, as well as our website, nationaltrust.tt. And we have a lot of tours as well to our various heritage sites. So my friends, do have a wonderful evening. And again, thank you very much to each of the heritage site managers, asset managers, the staff, the advocates, for the work that you continue to do in the vineyard that is Trinidad and Tobago's heritage economy. So my friends, thank you and enjoy the rest of your evening. See each of you all tomorrow, same time. Have a good evening.
Thank you very much. Good evening.
Good evening.